Hello and welcome to a comprehensive guide for playing a Tower Mesmer and being in charge of taking care of the towers during the Siege the Stronghold boss in the Stronghold of the Faithful raid. Why did I make this guide? Why not? There are a bunch of sections in this video that cover a lot of different topics as shown on the screen right now, in the description, and when you hover over the bottom of the video. To go over it really quickly, first we're going to be talking about the build, a little bit about armor setup, then traits, and then skills. This is all the stuff you need in order to get your build up and going. Then we are going to be talking about how to run through the cave, which is the first part of your job on Escort. Then we will talk about the rest of Escort, teleporting your friends up, solo capping towers, and all what you need to know for that. Then I'll briefly go over how to practice doing Escort by yourself. Then I'm going to be walking us through a full proper run of Escort, a run where I didn't do too well, so there is a lot to talk about. Then I'm going to have a full no commentary demonstration of a full run. Then finally I'll have a 1-minute summary if you want to skip down to that part and learn everything in this entire video compressed down. Feel free to skip to whatever section you want depending on what you want to learn. This video covers everything from basics to some advanced tips. If you want to learn everything, then let's get started. First, be aware that you need certain masteries in order to do this job. These masteries are Leyline Gliding, Bouncing Mushrooms, and Forsaken Thicket Waters. Starting off, let's look at the build you are wanting to use. There are a variety of different options you can take depending on your own preference, but I would generally suggest following along Hardstuck's Tower Chrono build, link in the description. This is a Chronomancer build using full Minstrel's gear with a Greatsword, Scepter, and Focus as weapons. The trait lines are Chaos, Inspiration, and Chronomancer. You can use different armor and runes and still do fine. An alternative armor set that is not as good but will still get the job done but is considerably cheaper is Soldier's Armor. Runes of Melandru and Runes of the Daliak are also budget versions of Runes of Durability. I prefer Runes of Melandru. There are some important traits to cover. First, Bountiful Disillusionment is incredibly important. Every time you shatter, you gain stability. Stability is super important to have, and this trait lets you have even more. You also gain some neat extra buffs, namely the Vigor and Regeneration being beneficial for you in this build. One thing you can consider is actually taking Prismatic Understanding, which gives you 50% more stealth duration from all of your stealth abilities. This might be beneficial for you if you're trying to stay up on towers for long durations and you have trouble surviving, but otherwise Bountiful Disillusionment is going to be better for you 99.99% of the time. You need that stability. Master of Manipulation is a trait that gives you super speed. The three main skills that you may use that are manipulations are Blink, Mimic, and Mass Invisibility. We'll talk more about picking skills later on, but this trait with Blink and Mass Invisibility will help you go through the tunnel faster. Next, Restorative Illusions allow you to cleanse a condition on you when you use any Shatter skill. So if you have any conditions on you, most detrimental to you being blind, be aware that you have an easy way to cleanse them. You have the opportunity to use a lot of different traits if you would like, but for this build, you pretty much want to stick to the traits in Hardstuck's build. This will serve you just fine. Overall, this is a safe build that will let you survive for a long time, let you capture towers by yourself, and let you teleport your squad up if you can't capture a tower. As you notice with their traits, you gain a lot of bonuses for your shatter skills, a new boon, alacrity, quickness, a condition cleanse, and a heal with each shatter. The benefits of these are even greater when you have illusions. One really quick note is that an important variation to this build is using literally any other Mesmer build, but subbing out 2 skills for Mimic and Teleport. This will let you be more of a boon support or a DPS for your team, which is beneficial for your team if you're trying to go fast, but generally, doing that won't speed your team up too much and isn't valuable unless you're trying to gain an edge in a tournament. Which, if you are watching this video, you probably aren't. Stick to the safer, deal no damage, sit on a tower, and read a book build. A lot of raid bosses in this game are very gracious when it comes to enrage timers. Escort is probably the single most gracious, given the fact it doesn't have an enrage timer. Don't bother about going too fast, just be safe and don't mess up, because you messing up probably means the squad will have to reset the fight. Beyond traits, we can start looking at skills. First, I'm going to look at utility skills, then weapon skills, then shatters. This section has a lot of tips and information, so feel free to slow down, rewatch, whatever you need. First, your healing skill. The only healing skill that you want to take is Mantra of Recovery. Some things can be said for the other ones, like having the projectile reflect from Mirror, but Mantra of Recovery is the best here. It's a lot of healing, and it's also double healing if your health is below 50%. Be aware that this isn't your only source of healing in the build. We'll talk more about that in a minute. Skipping to the elite skill, similar to your healing skill, the only skill you want to take is Mass Invisibility. It is straight up the best option. This skill will allow you to do 4 things. First, it will give you an easier time of getting through the cave if you struggle with that. Pop this in there, the mushrooms will ignore you. Second, this skill will give you an almost 100% chance to capture the first tower, free of charge, more on that later. Third, this can help you survive when you're up on the towers, alone, and waiting for the next ley line. Fourth, using this on your squad right before you all teleport up to the tower, which will cause all of the white mantle mobs on the tower to ignore you, and you just capture the tower before you can say subscribe to Athos on YouTube to your squad mates. Now, let's look at your utility skills. There are 3 main skills you can take, and then there are some others you can consider depending on what your needs or weak points are. The first one is Portal. This one is kind of obvious. You want to teleport your squad up to the tower, you need Portal. Some people have the mentality of, I can solo cap every tower. While that may be true, if you mess up one tower one time, that's going to add a lot of time of waiting or will cause a wipe. So just take Portal for the times you do mess up. Second is Mimic. This skill is a really cool Mesmer skill that will allow you to basically use any ability twice. When you use Mimic for 10 seconds, the next skill you use will have a cooldown of 1 second. Depending on what skill you use, Mimic will have a longer cooldown. Also note, because of your traits, Mimic grants you super speed. The main skill you want to consider when using Mimic is Portal. When you place a portal down on the tower and jump down to your friends, use Mimic right before you use Portal Exunt, and you will be able to teleport all your friends up and then instantly have another portal ready for the next tower. The third skill you want is Decoy. This is a 3-second visibility, stun break, and illusion summon skill, and is critical for being able to capture towers by yourself. It can also be beneficial for your own survival if absolutely needed. We'll go over how to use Decoy when we talk about solo capping towers. This skill is also the one skill that you will probably want to consider replacing if you need another skill, especially if you're not planning on attempting to solo cap towers. Now, the most important substitute skill to go over is Blink. This is a 1200 range teleport, which when combined with Mimic, will let you go through a lot of the cave instantly. This skill is beneficial for people who struggle with going through the cave. It is also a little useful in the towers with allowing you to reposition yourself, and is also a stun break that grants super speed. There are a few other skills you can consider, but I want to preface this by saying you will want to take Portal, Mimic, and Decoy, and substitute Decoy for Blink for an easier time going through the cave if you need it. Only consider these skills as replacement for Blink and Decoy only if you need it for a specific reason. Mantra of Resolve is an additional heal and condition cleanse for if you have trouble surviving by yourself. Mantra of Concentration is an additional heal, stability, and stun break for the same reason. Phantasmal Defender is an illusion that will taunt enemies, taking pressure off you, and can enhance their shatters once it turns into a clone. And Mirror Images is a stun break that will break enemy targeting and summon 2 clones, which will enhance their shatters. Again, these are alternatives you can consider, but generally stay away from them. Now, weapon skills. You're taking Greatsword, Scepter, and Focus. Your main combination for capturing towers comes from Focus and Greatsword. So switching these weapons out is going to prevent you from taking any towers. The only weapon of note to substitute is if you are struggling with getting through the cave and are not planning on solo capping towers, take a shield instead of a focus. This will give you more survivability. You could also consider taking Sword, which will increase your damage and still provide you with some defense, but for reasons we've already said, it isn't really that useful. Most of the time you're going to be wanting to sit on Scepter and Focus and swap to Greatsword only when you need it. With Scepter, your auto attack chain will summon a clone on your 3rd cast, so make sure you complete the chain and don't end it prematurely. Your second skill, Illusionary Counter, will block an attack and create a clone. A good bonus to your survival, and also a clone source. Your third skill, Confusing Images, is not too used for survival, but deals some damage and inflicts some confusion. Your fourth skill, Temporal Curtain, is your most important skill on this weapon set. Using it will place down a line on the ground which has 2 purposes. First, you or anyone in your squad who runs through it will gain swiftness. This is especially good for getting through the cave. Second, activating the skill again will pull in 5 targets to the line by using Into the Void. It can only pull in 5 targets. If there are 6 or more targets, it's going to miss some of them. We will talk more about this when we talk about capturing towers. Your 5th skill is Phantasmal Warden. This is a big projectile barrier that will block any projectiles going through it, so this is overall just a good defensive option in the cave or on the tower. Now, Greatsword. Your auto attack doesn't do too much for you, same goes for your 3rd attack, Mind Stab. But it does cripple enemies, which could be useful in certain situations, like against mushrooms. Your second ability, Mirror Blade, summons a clone. Your 4th ability, Phantasmal Berserker, summons a phantasm, which are beneficial to have up, especially once they are a clone for your shatters. Your main skill with Greatsword is your 5th ability, Illusionary Wave, which knocks back 5 targets. This is a central skill to your combo for solo capturing towers, which we will go over soon. Very quickly, if you choose to take a shield instead of focus, you swap out 2 skills. Your new 4th ability, Echo of Memory, is a short block that summons a phantasm. If you block an enemy attack, meaning that an enemy hits you while you're using the skill, you can use the skill again within 10 seconds. Your new 5th ability is Tides of Time, which gives you a buff, blocks missiles, and most importantly, will stun your enemies for 1 second. This ability is like a boomerang, meaning once it goes as far out as it can, it will return to you, and it will hit enemies twice if it goes through them twice. So you can stun a group of 5 enemies for 2 seconds, which can help relieve a lot of pressure from you. Lastly are your shatters. All your shatters are enhanced by your traits in that they give you alacrity, quickness, stability, heal you, remove a condition, and grant you a bonus boon. Your first 3 shatters are pretty basic. They deal some damage and a couple give conditions to your enemies. Typically, I use these shatters defensively and heal myself up with them while removing a bunch of conditions. Using all 3 of these shatters can give you a good chunk of healing. Your 4th shatter is where things get exciting. Distortion is an incredibly powerful Mesmer skill which can make a ton of mechanics throughout the game trivial. It makes you immune to conditions and damage for 1 second. It is incredibly important for when you are capturing towers, and we'll get to that later. Now lastly, you have the Chronomancer specific skill Continuum Split. This is an incredibly powerful and fun ability. When you use it, depending on how many clones you have active, you have a set period of time where you can use all of your abilities for free. Once Continuum Split ends, your position, health, endurance, and cooldowns return to how they were when you activated the ability. When it comes to this build, it's not super useful. Generally, I don't use it too often. Continuum Split unfortunately does not work for Portal. Continuum Split does work for Mass Invisibility, which may be useful. Note that you can activate Continuum Split at any time, even in the middle of casting an ability like Mass Invisibility. It is also not super useful for capturing towers solo because you don't have enough time to do the tower capture rotation with 0 clones active. And you shouldn't spend time activating clones in order to do it, and if you were to do it, it's just as a precaution in case you mess up. All your cooldowns will reset by the time you get to the next tower, so you don't need to worry about that. However, you could use Continuum Split for your illusionary wave while capturing towers, which we'll talk more about later. The biggest time you could consider using Continuum Split is when you are up on a tower, waiting for a ley line to appear, and need to use it to survive. Beyond that, not much use. So that is all the setup, skills, and traits that you will be interacting with when you are running this build. It's a lot, and there's a bunch of small things you should be aware of that we covered. If you have any questions about anything, feel free to leave it down in the comments below. Next, let's get into actually doing Escort. Everything here is covering the specifics of the job of a Tower Mesmer. While it touches on other aspects of Escort as a whole, it's not comprehensive to those parts. If you want to learn how to do back ward, be on Glinda duty, or whatever else, we won't be covering that. The first part of your job is running through the cavern. Many people consider this to be the single most difficult part of your job, especially if you are only teleporting people up and aren't trying to solo cap towers. As you begin Escort, the main group of people in your squad continue down the main road and escort Glinda to each white marker. You, however, will veer off to the left and begin the gauntlet of the Tunnel of Respite. This tunnel is a little bit of a windy tunnel, but is pretty straightforward in where you have to go. There are 2 big things in here that you need to be aware of. The first are the various mushroom mobs that are hostile and occupy all parts of this tunnel. The second are the thick water springs spread throughout. The various mushroom mobs behave like any other mob in the game. Their primary purpose for existing here is to slow you down or even kill you. For the most part, you are going to do your best to completely ignore them and run past them. There is almost 0 point in killing them. As such, you are going to want to use your various skills in order to mitigate damage and ignore them. While you don't want to use mass invisibility to get through the tunnel if you can help it, it is beneficial because it is 6 seconds of invisibility alongside some super speed. A better alternative for stealth is if you have decoy on your bar, which will give you 3 seconds of stealth and also stun break you if you happen to get stunned by a mushroom. For your greatsword, you will want to use Mirror Blade or Phantasmal Berserker on the mushrooms in order to summon phantasms and clones which can distract enemies and also make your shatters more powerful. With Scepter and Focus, you will want to use Illusionary Counter when you are expecting to be hit, which will block the attack. You'll also want to place Phantasmal Warden, which is another phantasm that also blocks projectiles. Lastly, you will also want to use Temporal Curtain in order to gain swiftness. Most of the time, you will just want to pop this down at the start of your run through the tunnel. You could also use it as a stun in order to shut down a group of mushrooms, which may make your run a little safer, but I tend to just use it at the start of the run. When running through the tunnel, I tend to not use my greatsword at all and just rely on my Scepter and Focus. This is good because I need to make sure that I have my focus ready to capture the first tower, my greatsword being ready to swap to without a cooldown. But if you can remember to do that, do what works best for you. Lastly, be aware of your mantra recovery alongside your first 3 shatters. Boons and healing are all nice. Make sure you don't use Distortion because you will want to save it for the tower just in case you need it. But if you have to use it in order to survive through the tunnel, that's probably a little bit of a better choice anyways. Lastly, don't use Continuum Split while in the tunnel. Once it's done, it will teleport you back to the location where you used it, which if you can imagine, may not be the best thing as you will lose progress through the tunnel and may die. The only time in the tunnel you may want to consider using it is at the very start if you want to try to stack swiftness and or invisibility on you before you start running through. Next, there are different springs of thicker water found throughout the tunnel. Whenever anybody is in the tunnel, they gain the debuff called Toxic Spores. When this debuff is on you, you have reduced healing and also take a ton of damage. Having this debuff on you for several seconds will mean that you are dead. By running through the thicket waters, you will gain the buff called Healing Cleanse, which will remove the toxic spores debuff from you, and also make you immune to receiving it for 5 seconds. So, in order to not die, you need to run through the thicket waters. There are a few different paths you can take through the cavern. The thicket waters are set up in different places throughout the tunnel. However, there is specifically one path that I would generally recommend for you to take every time you go through here, where basically, you run through the first thicket waters, then turn right down the tunnel as soon as you can. As you do, there's another thicket waters there for you to reset your buff, then run straight forward through a third thicket waters, and then you have made it to the end. As you start this run off, you want to make sure that you pop down Temporal Curtain at the first thicket waters to get a lot of swiftness, which will be enough for most of your run through. As you approach the first mushrooms, I like to dodge through them to make sure I don't get hit. Generally, you want to use one dodge here and then jump over the rocks. If you need to use 2, that is okay as well. Just know that you might need the second dodge with the next mushrooms. I don't typically use decoy in my run through the tunnel, but if you want to, I find the best time to do so to be when you're running through the second thicket waters. Popping decoy here will let you ignore the second group of mushrooms, and you will only have to worry about the third. Since I don't use decoy here, I like to use Phantasmal Warden, which will distract the group of mushrooms here and let me run past safely, most of the time anyways. Additionally, as you run into the second thicket waters, you should have taken some damage from toxic spores alongside being hit by mushrooms. Using one charge of your Mantle recovery here alongside some of your shatters will help you heal back up. As I run through the final group of mushrooms and thicket waters, I like to use Illusionary Counter to block any attacks from the mushrooms and get by safely. If you have taken more damage after the last time you've healed, such as another tick or 2 of toxic spores, just use your other Mantle charge and shatters to heal back up. After the last thicket water and group of mushrooms, you are out of the tunnel and can run up to the tower by running around the left side and up the hill, gliding over to the bouncing mushroom, and taking the bouncing mushroom to get up to the tower. Be aware that a group of white mantle do spawn on the hill, so be careful of them. Generally, you don't have to worry about them because you'll have glided over before they can attack you, but be aware of their presence if you end up hanging out in this area. Before we talk about capturing towers, I want to quickly go over using Blink in the tunnel. Using Blink will allow you to get through the tunnel significantly faster. This isn't too beneficial for speedrunning, as you'll likely have more than enough time to capture the first tower before the group is even ready for you to. But this is important for relieving pressure off of you in the tunnel, especially if you struggle with it. As you begin your run through the cavern, start off as normal where you gain swiftness from Temporal Curtain and run through the first thicket water. But right as you begin, after you use Temporal Curtain, use Mimic, then, without using any other skill, use Blink to get all the way through the first part of the tunnel to the bottom of the pile of rocks you jump over. As you do, just jump over the rocks and get into the second thicket water. As you gain the buff, use Blink again to instantly get most of the way to the end of the tunnel, use Phantasmal Warden or Illusionary Counter to protect yourself from the last group of mushrooms, run through the thicket water, and then make your way up to the tower. Super easy. Now, let's begin to talk about capturing towers. This comes in 2 parts. The first part is using your portal to teleport the group up. The second part is about capturing towers by yourself. Let's talk about the portal first. Your portal ability comes in 2 parts. Portal Entree, which will put one end of the portal down on the ground. You then get a buff on your bar that lasts for 60 seconds, which will allow you to cast Portal Exeunt up to 5,000 yards away. As you place Portal Exeunt, your 2 portals connect and anyone for 10 seconds can go through either end of the portal to reach the other end. A singular portal can only be used 20 times, meaning that all 10 people in your party can go through the portal twice, up to the tower and back down, though typically the person on Glinda duty does not go through the portal. So, the general order of events here is, you place the portal down on the tower, glide down to where the group is stacked, cast Mass Invisibility, cast Mimic, cast Portal Exeunt, everyone goes through the portal and sits still in order to capture the tower, and then returns through the portal to continue escorting Glinda. To start going over some important tips for each step, before you use Portal Exeunt, you want to make sure you use Mimic. Mimic will instantly reset the cooldown in your portal, allowing you to use it again. So when you get up to the second tower, you can instantly use Portal again without having to wait. Depending on how fast or slow your group is, you may have to wait for Portal and Mimic to recharge before you can use it for the 3rd, 5th, or whatever tower. Before you use Mimic, you want to make sure you use Mass Invisibility. Having your group invisible as you all capture the tower will make the process much smoother and could potentially save someone's life. Make sure you use Mass Invisibility before you use Mimic, otherwise Mimic will be used for the Mass Invisibility instead of your Portal. So again, the order of skills you want to use is Mass Invisibility, and then Mimic, and then Portal Exeunt. As you're placing the entrance to the portal and jumping off the tower, you want to be aware of your health and conditions. Make sure you use any protective and healing skills you need in order to stay alive and not die. Be extra aware of conditions like fear being on you. If you get feared as you're jumping off the tower and are unable to glide, you will probably die unless you get rid of it and start gliding. Additionally, you want to be aware of when you are placing the portal entrance. When you look at the floor of the tower where the wide mantle mobs are sitting, you can see it as a giant circle. The capture point on the tower is also a circle. However, the capture point circle is slightly smaller than the tower circle, so if you place the portal on the outer edge of the tower, the group won't be inside of the capture point circle, so the group can't progress. Make sure you're placing the portal within the capture point, so aim towards placing it towards the center of the tower or anywhere that isn't on the edge outside of the capture point. That's pretty much everything you need to know about teleporting your squad up to the tower. Now, let's talk about capturing towers by yourself. This is what is going to set you apart from all the other Mesmers who just teleport people up. It may seem intimidating at first, but let's walk through it and set you up to practice it by yourself. Let's go over the basics of what you need to do in order to capture a tower. It is a relatively basic rotation. Additionally, what you do is slightly different for the first tower compared to the rest, so let's go over the rest first. Remember how we were just talking about how the capture point circle is smaller than the size of the tower? Let's utilize that by pushing all the wide mantle on the tower to the edge of the tower. Every time you land on a tower, you want to use decoy to give yourself stealth. Then, you want to place temporal curtain down on the ground. This is the trickiest part of everything you are doing here. As you place down temporal curtain, you can use Into the Void to suck all enemies into the central point of temporal curtain. This ability can only hit 5 people and can only hit people up to 600 units away, so you generally want to place your temporal curtain down in the middle of the platform so that it can reach all 5 white mantle. You also want to be very quick in what you are doing so you can use Into the Void before any white mantle react to you. This next part is optional, not everyone does this, but I like to quickly use Distortion to add a little bit of extra security where it will cleanse a condition and also make me immune to damage. The downsides of this is that it adds another button onto your rotation and also removes it from your ability to use it in the future. With Distortion, note that it prevents capture point contribution, so make sure you don't use it while trying to capture. Only use it while the white mantle are in the capture point. Next, right after you cast Into the Void and or Distortion, you want to quickly weapon swap to Greatsword and position yourself to the group of white mantle to be able to knock them back. With all 5 white mantle being in the center, use your Greatsword 5 ability, Illusionary Wave, which will allow you to knock the group back 450 units, which is enough to push them all the way to any edge if they are in the center of the tower. Some notes about this. 1. Illusionary Wave will only knock back 5 enemies, so you want to use it before any summons appear on the platform because it will complicate things. 2. You need to make sure you position yourself to be able to knock the group back, so as you pull the group into the middle with Into the Void, run up right next to the center. 3. Connected to the previous note, you want to make sure that you push the group into the edge of the tower outside of the capture point. The Bloodstone turret that you can use has a little outcropping that comes out into the tower. If you push the wide mantle there, they aren't going to be out of the capture point, so push them literally anywhere else. Something else to be aware of is pushing the group away from where you might be on the tower. This isn't too important, but if you don't want to stay on the tower, the group is going to stay where they are pushed to, so you might not want them standing right where you land on the tower. This is specifically important for the first tower. 4. Blinds. The wide mantle can blind you, which means your next hit will miss. If your next hit ends up being either Into the Void or Illusionary Wave, your entire combo is ruined. So you either want to wait a moment and make sure blind is not on you, or use a shatter such as Distortion to strip it from you. 5th, in the best case scenario, you are going to want to use Illusionary Wave while the group of wide mantle are still stunned from being pulled in with Into the Void. As such, you're going to need to be really fast and make sure you do your combo quickly. In the worst case scenario, you're going to be too slow and the group is going to spread out and you won't be able to push them onto the edge. 6th, in some circumstances, you may want to use Continuous Split in order to cast Illusionary Wave twice. This will give you some more leeway in pushing the group back because you can get 2 chances, or if the group spreads you can try to hit them all throughout 2 attacks. But be aware that while Continuous Split is active, you cannot capture the tower. All in all, it's not super good to use Continuous Split here, but it can be nice depending on what you need. Now lastly, your final step for capturing the tower. As you push the group out, you want to run up to the group, while staying inside the capture point. This will put you in melee range of most of the enemies, and will prevent them from running back into the capture point should you be slow or the game be a little buggy. So to summarize everything you do, as you land on the tower, make sure you have your scepter and focus out beforehand and you don't have a cooldown on weapon swap. Land on the tower and instantly use decoy to go invisible. Place temporal curtain down in the middle of the tower and use distortion if you would like, and then use Into the Void to pull all enemies in. Weapon swap to your greatsword and use distortion if you would like, and having used it already, run up to the group in the center, use Illusionary Wave to push them to the edge of the tower, and then finally run up to the group while staying inside of the capture point to lock them in place. Again, focus out, temporal curtain in the middle, pull with Into the Void, weapon swap, push them out to the edge with Illusionary Wave, run up to them while still being in the capture point. What do you do if you mess anything up? Don't worry about it. Use your portal and remember everything we talked about with using your portal. Capturing towers by yourself can be a little finicky, but with a lot of practice, you can get it down reliably. Now, I mentioned that the first tower is a little bit different than the rest. I like to say that it can be kind of a coin flip with capturing towers. There's some RNG going on, and you have to remember a lot of things. That is not the case with the first tower. Every single person here should be able to capture the first tower all by themselves with a 99% or higher success rate. The idea of capturing all of the towers is the same, but there's a very distinct difference between the first tower and the rest. In order to reach the second, third, and so on tower, you need to ley line glide to them. With the first one, you have to use a bouncing mushroom. When you are ley line gliding, you cannot be under the effects of stealth as you come down from the ley line, just while you're on it by dodging. But you can be under the effects of stealth while using a bouncing mushroom. So, while the White Mantle will start moving and attacking you as you approach them via ley line, they can't do the same if you are fully invisible while on a bouncing mushroom. As such, you will want to use mass invisibility right before you jump onto the bouncing mushroom. This will grant you 6 seconds of stealth, which is more than enough time you need in order to do everything to solo capture a tower. The White Mantle will have no idea what hit them. As you use mass invisibility, jump onto the bouncing mushroom and then land on the tower. The idea is still here, but you don't have to use decoy. Use temporal curtain in the center of the platform and then use Into the Void, weapon swap to greatsword while running up to them, use illusionary wave to push the group to the edge of the tower, and then run up to the group on the edge to lock them in place. Now you will have captured the tower by yourself, sped up the escort run a bunch, and have impressed your friends. And now at this point in this unnecessarily long video that I wanted to make because 1, it's fun, and 2, it's actually honestly kind of useful, we now know pretty much everything you need to do to get through the cavern, capture towers by yourself, and portal your friends up in case you need it. Really quickly, if you happen to be watching this full video, I wanted to say I appreciate you. I've been writing the script and honestly it's super long, and in the grand scheme of things it's kind of unnecessary, and the 1-minute recap section of video is more than enough for most people. Though if you are watching through this, you probably value the minutia as much as I do. If you enjoy my content, feel free to subscribe because honestly it means a lot to me. You can do all the other YouTube stuff that people scream at you to do as well if you want, no pressure. Now, let's go over some random thoughts and tidbits for Escort as a whole that I'm just going to cram into this section of the video. First, what are you going to do when you aren't teleporting people up or aren't capturing a tower? Most people rejoin the squad on the road and help them progress forward. As the group gets Glinna to your next capture point, you can start heading back up. If you are trying to optimize your run, you are going to want to start heading back up to the towers so that you can get to the next tower at the first opportunity so you aren't wasting any time. Something else you can do is stay up on the towers, be this surviving by yourself on the tower, which your build is very capable of doing, or by running around. I like to find certain spots to hide or just keep looping back and forth on the ley lines. Then I get up to the next tower as soon as the group gets Glinna to her next capture point. Next, you want to be a little aware of where the groups of mobs are. When no one is on the tower, they just sit still. You don't want them sitting still in a spot that is detrimental to you. This is mostly important with the group of White Mantle on the first tower and right before the bouncing mushroom up to the first tower, because if they are sitting idle in range of you, they are going to attack you if you're trying to hide out near the bouncing mushroom. To make sure the cavern group doesn't attack you, you just want to speed right past them and make sure you never engage them in combat or get near them for the rest of the fight. To make sure the tower group doesn't attack you, don't push them towards the edge next to the bouncing mushroom. Additionally, be aware of what else is going on in Escort. For example, you don't want to portal people up to the tower while a warg or group of White Mantle is about to kill Glinna. The group needs to save Glinna. So, just wait for them to clear whatever is incoming or time it right so they will be back down before it's an issue. Also, be aware that every time a tower is captured, the front warg and back warg spawns. If your person in charge of handling the back warg is newer, they may have issues dealing with one warg before another one spawns. But if they are more experienced, it probably shouldn't be too big of an issue. Next, I want to reiterate how important it is that you're holding your scepter in focus and not your greatsword, specifically before you start approaching the next tower to capture it. You don't want to be sitting there, greatsword in hand, unable to capture the tower. And lastly, I want to say no pressure to capture towers. You 100% should go for them every time, and you should spend some time getting better at it if you would like. But if you mess up, don't worry, you're not doing as bad as the person who ran into a mine. Now, let's talk about setting up an instance for you to practice all of this. You have two options here. Option 1 is to have a really patient friend willing to help you out. Option 2 is to have a second computer running a second Guild Wars 2 account. The two of you, be it a friend or the other you, is going to join Stronghold of the Faithful together. While you practice your run, you just want your friend or other computer to sit near Glinna. They can start the escort by talking to Glinna when you are at the gate, so you don't have to run all the way there while in combat, or you can just do it by yourself. Mostly, you just want them on Glinna so she doesn't die to the assassins. Other than that, they don't have to do anything at all and just want to sit there. They actually want to sit there because pulling Glinna along the road by themselves is probably not going to work out too well for either of you, and they don't need to anyways. While they're doing that, you can practice running through the cavern and capturing the first tower by yourself. Should you fail or successfully capture the first tower, both of you can then use /GG to reset the encounter and go again. If you want to practice capturing the first tower as if it was a tower other than the first one, just skip using mass invisibility and use decoy as soon as you land from the bouncing mushroom. This isn't going to perfectly replicate capturing the other towers because you aren't landing from the ley lines and you don't have the pressure from the previous towers as well, but it's still a little something. But by setting this up to practice, you can spend however much time you want to master going through the tunnel and capturing the first tower. Then of course, actually practicing a proper run through of the encounter is your next step and best bet. Now I'm going to run us through an example run of Escort. This run is one where I messed up a bunch and was pretty much a complete failure, but it allows us a good opportunity to talk a lot about what can go wrong. If you want to watch a good run of Escort that doesn't have me explaining things in it, watch the next section. So let's get started. This run is not that great of a run. I made a ton of mistakes in it, as I just said, so we're going to go over all these mistakes I made and what you should do to not make these mistakes. Starting off, I just throw my line down there on the thicket waters and I run through the line to get some swiftness, and then I run through the thicket waters to get my buff, and I try my best to avoid those mushrooms there, but I don't do a good job, so I have to use all my shatters and both my heals there. And then there I summon an illusion phantasm to distract those enemies and I dodge past them, and then I do the same thing here, but I use decoy to go invisible, and I got past the last two groups pretty easy. Even though I took a bunch of damage, I can just heal up here while I run up to the bouncing mushroom. Coming up to the tower here is just very basic. I use my mass invisibility, jump up, use my line, pull them in, use my greatsword to knock them back, and just like 99% of my attempts on the first tower, I always get it. So this time I got this tower, and this is a little bit of a spoiler for the rest of the video, but this is the only tower that I get in this entire run. I fail in solo capping every single one from here on out. But after capturing the first tower, I'm kind of just hanging out here. This is an area where I like to hang out because it's relatively safe, as long as I haven't pushed the white mantle on the tower over to the edge of the tower, as long as I haven't pulled the white mantle on the cavern there up over towards where this bouncy mushroom is. I'm not going to get hit by any of them, and I can kind of just hang out here while the rest of my squad kind of pushes Glinna forward, kills any white mantle, kills the warg that spawns, and they get to the next capture point, and then once they capture the capture point, I can go ahead and get back up onto the bouncing mushroom and I can start gliding across. Fun fact about this run, this is actually the run that I used to record for my story episode for the story of the Forsaken Thicket, so that's what I was doing around this time. But as the group is pulling up Glinna, before Glinna's there, I start jumping up on the bouncy mushroom because I know by the time I get here, the ley line's going to spawn, and I was actually gliding up before the ley line appeared because the ley line spawns before it visually appears, so I can kind of go up there and kind of look at it. But seen here, I made a very critical mistake where I had my greatsword out and not my scepter focus. So I swapped my scepter focus here and I used mass invisibility to stall some time, and then I pulled them in, but because the necromancers had summoned some minions already, I was not able to push them all back into the edge. So I have to put down my portal here, and you saw I got feared there, but luckily I was alright. And then I just dropped my portal down here and I just port everyone up, and then we deal with it all safe and sound. Here I portaled before the warg got to them. Sometimes you want to be really careful that you don't portal like as the warg is getting to them, because they need to kill the warg before the warg kills Glinna, so you just need to be careful about like exactly when you're porting, with if there's a group of white mantle or if there are wargs there that you need to deal with. And here I just have someone on my squad that accidentally got stuck, so I just have to save him, but unfortunately he does kind of go down here again and dies. So this next spot here along this rampart here below the third tower is somewhere where I like to hang out a little bit, because it's sometimes a safe spot, sometimes it's not a huge safe spot, but if you can summon like an illusion here, if none of them run onto the platform, you can do a pretty good job. But here I can just go up the ley line, and here I'm trying to do the whole rotation again, but I had blind on me there and I missed, and then I tried to use my greatsword 5 to push them all back, but unfortunately it didn't hit them all, so I just threw down my portal and I came down here and I portaled my group up. I control clicked my portal into text chat so they knew that I was dropping portal so that they could be ready. And now here I'm just hanging out on the tower here for a little bit, where I was just trying to survive a little bit, but I jumped off to go somewhere where there's a little bit more of a safer area to be, and I'm kind of just doing the same thing now. And now I'm just going to go ahead and jump off, and I'm going to go back into the ley line, and I'm just going to kind of stall a little bit by running around the ley line. With the stealth gliding mastery that you get from leveling up your gliding masteries, when you press V, when you dodge, you actually go invisible while you're gliding. So it's very beneficial to use that here while you are going around the ley lines, because you can get some nice invisibility that will allow you, the white mantle to not hit you, because the white mantle will hit you while you are gliding past. So you want to go invisible so that the white mantle can't see you, so they can't hit you. But now with the next tower, we're going to see something really fun here. So as I come up to the tower, my portal is not ready yet. There's 10 seconds left on it right now, and I'm going to go ahead and try my best to survive. I'm going to use mass invisibility to just get a little bit of extra safety here, and then I'm just going to use a bunch of abilities, and I'm going to go ahead and use portal there. And I used mimic on accident there, so I only have 10 seconds in order to use my portal exit in order to reset the cooldown, and I do it with like 1 second or so to spare, and I portal all my friends up, and unfortunately they get hit back, which is not good, because then they have to get back towards the portal, and that kind of messes them up a bunch. And we see with one person they weren't able to go through the portal. But here I'm trying to survive, and I'm getting hit by all these white mantle, and I know I'm going to go down, so I'm trying to go to a place where if I go down I'm able to revive safely. And I knew in that area, if I came around this corner, I would be out of the line of sight of those battle mages there on the ramparts, where they wouldn't be able to hit me. So then I quickly hit 4 so I can start healing, and then one of the white mantle actually starts running up here, so it's a good thing that he didn't get here in time and hit me, and I was able to get up, and I was able to go back near towards the beginning where I'll just stall a little bit. And I did something a little foolish right here, which you should be aware of, is that I actually kind of glided over the tunnel where you get the debuff that deals a lot of damage. So you kind of want to make sure you don't glide over the tunnel and you're kind of closer to the tower so you don't get that debuff. Additionally, right here, I'm checking my minimap to kind of see where my squad is in their ascent up towards the gate, and I kind of want to wait until I know about the time that Glenna's going to be able to get to that place. And I went a little bit early here, but I just start going up all the towers, and I get to the last tower before they are there, so I'm going to go ahead and kind of just sit here and try to survive a little bit. Glenna's almost there, so I don't have to wait too long here. So I just use all my different survival abilities here, and I see Glenna going up towards the capture point, so I'm getting ready to go to the next tower because the ley line's about to spawn, and I want to be ready like as soon as possible to glide into it. However, I am sitting on the edge there, and then I get feared right off the tower, and I don't react in time to be able to deal with it all. And then I'm just sitting here and I'm typing in chat, and I almost die, but luckily I roll out of it in time, and I basically kind of just work my way back up towards the tower, and I start gliding over again so I can get back to that tower, so I can glide over to the last tower so I can finish this whole escort thing. I'm very low on health here, so I have to be really careful as I go up these towers and as I get to the last tower. So I use both of my dodges to get some invisibility, and as I land I want to heal, and I drop my portal as well, and then I'm just going to go ahead and glide to my group so we can go ahead and capture the last tower. One thing to note about this last tower is you actually want to capture it super fast and then get straight back down, because the boss Mechliod will actually teleport up to the tower, as we see there, if someone's still up there about like less than a second after the boss spawns. And then after you capture all the towers, you come over to the stairs, and then you want to sit here, and you don't want to move at all until the very end, which you then poke Glenna in. And now that we walked through a full run of Escort, let's take a look at a barely edited run through without any narration. This run should be a good example for you to base your own run off of, but I did make a few mistakes throughout the run. The whole run was completed in about 7 minutes, so it did qualify for the I Can Outrun a Warg achievement, so enjoy. And now, a summary. So, you want to learn how to be a Tower Mesmer in the Siege the Stronghold raid boss? Here you go. First, you want to equip this build by Heartstuck, link in the description. You also want these masteries. Once you have everything equipped and ready to go, along with 9 other people you feel obliged to carry through this instance, get started. While they go do whatever, to the right side, you want to run through the gladiatorial battle arena of the Tunnel of Respite, where you are doing the hardest part of the fight. Dodge through mushrooms, avoid their attacks, run through the thicker waters, and get to the end. Once you find this cool looking mushroom, you can use mass invisibility and then jump on it. With your scepter and focus in hand, throw down your temporal curtain and pull all the races together with Into the Void, and then use your illusionary wave greatsword attack to push them all to the edge of the tower. Run up to them and then you have successfully captured the tower. If you're trying to capture a tower that is not the first one, use decoy as you land to go invisible and then do all the same things. Did you fail? Just drop your portal entrance in the center of the tower, glide down to any friends who haven't died to a mine, use mass invisibility, use mimic, and drop your portal exit so you can all capture together. Once you get to the end, kill the boss while standing on the stairs. Now you have an extra ally. This is everything you need to know about being a Tower Mesmer in the Siege of the Stronghold boss of the Stronghold of the Faithful raid wing. This entire video was a lot. Whether you just watched part of it or watched the whole thing, I appreciate you for being here. If you want to support me, make sure you subscribe. Currently, I post mostly Guild Wars 2 and Let's Play content on my channel. If you have any questions, comments, or other tips, feel free to leave them down in the comments below. I'm sure other people have tips and suggestions to make this fight even easier, and I would love to hear them. I hope you all are taking good care of yourselves. Remember to drink some water, check your posture, and subscribe. Thank you for watching.